Hello, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. My name is Noel A. Figueroa. I am your host of the P.W.P sessions, that is the Poets with Purpose sessions. We are now back from a short summer break. This is episode 13 of the P.W.P sessions podcast. And tonight, I have the privilege and the honor of interviewing another poet and an author by the name of Robert Gibbons. Before we get into the interview, I'm just going to share my screen and give a little background of Robert before we dive into the interview. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Now, as I stated, this is episode 13 of the P.W.P Sessions podcast. And for those not familiar with the podcast, the P.W.P Sessions is a show, a podcast where I conduct interviews with new or established authors of poetry, and I feature a performance of their work along with an audience Q&A session in the end. I am the host, Noel A. Figueroa. I am a poet, author, blogger, workshop facilitator, and event host, and I am the creator of the P.W.P Sessions. And tonight's guest is Robert Gibbons, and this is just a bio to share about him before we get started with the interview. Robert Anthony Gibbons, a native Floridian, came to New York City in 2007 in search of his muse, Langston Hughes, and found a vibrant contemporary poetry community at the Cornelia Street Cafe, the Green Pavilion, Nomads Choir, Brownstone Poets, Hydrogen Jukebox, Saturn Series, and Phoenix, among other venues. His first book, Close to the Tree, was published by the New York-based Three Rooms Press in 2012. He is an Obsidian Fellow in 2020. He is a Cave Canem Fellow from 2019 to 2021, and has received residencies from the Norman Mailer Foundation in 2017 and the Disquiet International Literary Program in 2018. In 2018, he completed his MFA at City College. Robert has been published in over 30 literary magazines and in several notable anthologies. Recent publication credits include Peregrine, Expound, Promethean, Turtle Island Quarterly, Killer Whale, and Sweet Sun Valley Review, and the Bronx Memoir Project, Volume 2, published by the Bronx Council of the Arts. Robert's first collection, Close to the Tree, was published by Three Rooms Press in 2012. His chapbook, Flight, was published by Poets Wear Prada in 2019. You Almost Home Boy, published by Harlequin Creatures in 2019, and his collaboration with Brooklyn-based visual artist Amy Williams, Some Little Words, was published by 440 Gallery in Brooklyn in 2021. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest, Robert Gibbons. Hey, Robert, good evening. Glad to have you on this podcast tonight. How are you doing today?
How you doing? Noel, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm just trying to really figure this lighting part out. I'm trying to figure out the lighting. Yeah, so I'm having some struggles, but it's working. It's working out.
Excellent.
It's working out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Happy to show.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna begin,
thank you.
I'm gonna begin by posing a question as I do with all my previous guests. Who is Robert?
Right. Well, it's been a long journey, Noel. It's been like a long journey. I come from South Florida, so I come from a little place on the bottom of Lake Okeechobee called Belglade, Florida, and it is mostly a area known for sugar cane. So I came from a big area that's enclosed by sugar cane. And I was fortunate enough that I had a mother that was a third grade teacher that really inspired me at an early age to pursue the love of learning. I'll say it like that.
Right. Now, what prompted your decision to get into poetry? Like, what was your motivation or inspiration to start writing poetry?
I guess the church, reading Christmas poems and Easter speeches. Back at that time, it was a big deal for us to stand in front of the church and recite a poem for the people of the church. And so I think that's where it really started. I've never really went back that far to really connect it to that, but I think that has a lot to do with the beginning of my love for poetry. The rhyming of poems with kids and how they love to use rhyming poems together. I think that's what really started it.
Right. Now, when you made this, what was the motivating factor in putting together your first book?
Well, I have been, like you read in my bio, thank you so much. Like you read in my bio, when I came to New York, the idea is to expose yourself as much as possible. So I went around like a lot of poets do in New York and read their work. Hopefully a publisher will hear you. And that's what happened to me. So I just so happened to be hanging out in the Cornelia Street Cafe group of downtown poets. And they caught up with me and said, we would like to publish your work. And so I moved here in 2007. So it was about 4 or 5 years. And then Three Rooms Press asked me, could they publish my first book?
Right, excellent. Now, when you first started writing, what were the subjects that you covered, and are you covering those same subjects now, or are you exploring new subjects?
I'm exploring new subjects. At the beginning, it was more community. Close to the Tree represents me being close to the tree, the community, close to my roots, close to my family, close to my mother, close to my grandmother, close to my father, close to people that are so important, my teachers, the people that have been inspirations to me all my life. So it's like, that's what Close to the Tree, that's the metaphor of Close to the Tree. And it expands, it expands as we grow to social justice, to education, to marginalization, to discrimination, to genderism, ageism, sexuality, all those kinds of things. I'm beginning to delve more deeper into my work now.
All right, excellent. Now, this first project that's published, is it self-published, or is it through a
no?
Did you self-publish?
Three Rooms Press. No, I've never self-published, but Three Rooms Press is a independent press in New York City. They are an independent press, and they published that first chapbook for me They sat down with me and asked me how do I want to, how do I want to lay the book out? And that's the thing, that's the confrontation that I had, learning the industry, the whole conflict between self-publishing and publishing. Oh, Robert, somebody wants to publish you. That's a good thing. Well, it's a good thing if you know the publishing industry, but if you don't know the business, then there's where the conflict comes. So all of my people out there that's listening to me that have never been published, please study the industry and make sure that you align with people that really support your work is my suggestion.
Right. Now, can you dive into that a little deeper? Like, what was the like? How would you describe your how would you describe the process for you for yourself from start to finish? From the
Well,
time you had the concept of the book to finally getting it printed.
yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Noel. Thank you so much. That is a question for a lot of poets because most poets that I know in the business, they don't know the publishing side of it. They say, okay, so I'm publishing this particular chapbook or this particular work, but then it's the marketing, it's the promotion. And usually traditionally that's a publishing company that does all that work for the celebrated writers, for the writers that can sell 400,000 copies, immediately even before the book comes out. But for those of us that are on this grassroots level, we need to know that that they will promote, they will publish your book, but then you have to take ownership of your work, meaning that you have to go out. Most of the books that I've sold, Noel, I have sold from reading. So, Three Rooms Press tried their best. They did what they did. They published the book. They put the book out in the world. But then it was this other layer that I had no knowledge about promoting your work to the world. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. That's a
Yeah.
process that's important to understand because even when you're dealing with a small press, I find that small press and self-publishing is similar in that regard of you having to take the responsibility
Yes.
of promoting yourself. So it's
Oh
important
yes. Oh yeah.
to know that piece of it because you are in
Right.
control of who your audience is. You know who
That's
you
right.
get the book to. So it's important to be prepared to
That's
do that
right.
work. So it's very important that you pointed that out. Now, what was that feeling
Right.
like?
And that feeling at first, it was like, oh, you are published. That's a good thing. That's a good feeling. But then after a while, that wanes. It burns out, and then you coming down to the real energy. And the energy is that my book, I want my book to eventually evolve. And oftentimes it takes more than one book. Fortunately for me, I have a very supportive community in New York. So, the second one that came out, Flight, that was a chapbook, but you see, it was from 2012 to 2019 before I published something else, and that was because I had gone through my energy, gone to graduate school, and made other connections. And so the Flight is the copy, it is really my graduate thesis. We had to create new poems in that grad program. And so this publisher out of New Jersey decided that they would publish that graduate thesis. And that's what Flight is based on. It's based on a metaphorical flight that I took from New York to Oregon one summer. Yeah.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
when you were putting the book together, like who
Right.
who were the people in your life that were involved in helping you get the project done? Like who are your supporters or influencers?
Mostly my close friends that are poets here in New York, or some of my family members. They always support me. And mostly the editors that I've aligned myself with. I think that's very, very important. Instead of rushing to be published, I really think that you should develop a relationship with that editor prior. And there are lots of editors that come at me now, but it's not like, no, I'm not jumping to be published anymore. I'm jumping to be realized that my work can really make a difference in the world, because that's more important to just being published. How idea is being published is a good thing. I'm not fighting against that, but also using the work to make change. I mean, social change, educational change, marginalization change, those kinds of changes that the work would influence young men of color or young people of color or students that I've taught in the past. Those kinds of things are very, very important to me, that they look at my work as respectable, not something that just has two book covers on it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, if you had to choose between self-publishing and dealing with a small press or a major publisher, like what route would you choose? Like what would be your preference and why? Or do you
I
have a
mean, for my brothers and sisters out there, I do have a preference, for my brothers and sisters out there that have self-published. I don't see anything wrong with that. If that's the route that they choose, they obviously chose that route to take ownership of their own book career. But again, even with self-publishing, it's just like you still have to know the industry. You still have to know the machinations of what you're going to go through as far as marketing and taking your book to the next level or getting your work into the hands of someone that can promote. Like a lot of poets don't have agents, actors and musicians and all of those, the other art areas have agents, but rarely do you see a poet that have an agent that can represent them out in the world. It does happen. There are poets that I know in New York with agents, and it can happen, that represent you in the larger world of literary art. But that's a rare occurrence for poets. And so they can represent you in the world. They can get you the spots, the commercials, and all those kinds of things. But again, you have to be your own mogul. You have to be your own businessman. You have to be your own marketer. You have to be your own promoter. You have to create your own work. And so I agree with the brothers that are proactive and the sisters that are proactive in their work and they create their own reality. That's fine. But for me, I think that my route would be to work through the literary agencies.
Right, right, definitely, definitely. Now, when you were putting this book
Yeah.
together, who would you say, who would you consider to be your inspirations in this project?
Um, well, I have so many. I mean, like, my mother used to read poems to me when I was a kid. She used to read the poems of Langston Hughes to me, and I know about Baldwin. I know about Richard Wright. I know about Zora. I know about all of the literary stars and all of the kind of stuff. I've studied them. But then it's the grassroots people. It's my second grade teacher that put me in the spelling bee. It's my seventh grade teacher, that encouraged me to read certain stories. My high school teachers that said, Robert, you have a good voice. You're a good writer. So really, pursue writing if that's what you want to do. I do have a lot of people to thank, including my family in Florida, my family in Georgia, my families in DC, my families here in New York, around the country. A lot of people have really inspired me to pursue my dream and to be able to live the life of a poet in New York City is a great thing, but it's a difficult thing. It's not an easy road, you know?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It does take work, but
Right.
it's definitely you
Yeah.
definitely enjoy the rewards once you put in the work.
Yes.
When you're doing something that you're passionate about, that's
Yes.
really
Yes.
helps make a
You
difference for
have to
sure.
put in the work. You're right, my friend. You have to put in the work, and that's the thing. A lot of people live in this city and other places that I know. They are in fantasy with it. Oh, I'm a writer, but they don't ever write. They might write once in a while, but they want to be a writer. Well, it takes work just like everything else. It's something that Mary Oliver has always taught me is through her work is that if you're passionate about this writing, then you will pursue it every day like a job. You know.
Right, exactly, exactly. Now,
Mhm.
of all the subjects that you write about, is there any subject in particular that you like to write about more than others?
Well, my undergrad degree, I went to Florida A&M in Tallahassee, Florida, and my undergrad degree is in history. So most of my poetry or most of the work that I've written, because I've written more than poetry, but most of my work that I've written has a historical lens to it. I grew up in a state that's, I can say that sometimes it's misunderstood, and most of the time it's not misunderstood, but sometimes it's misunderstood. And I try my best in my work I used to be ashamed to tell people I was from Florida, but then I said, not the people that I know, not the people that I grew up with, not the people that have supported me and loved me all my life. Those people from Florida have been supporters, strong supporters in my life. And I didn't grow up in the wealth that you see of Florida, or the people that that's always in the news or always in the newspaper about Florida. But Florida has another story, and I'm a part of that other story. There is a positive message from Florida. There is a positive history that comes out of Florida. Florida is not always in the news in a negative light. And so, me being from Florida, me being a product of Florida, I'll tell you a quick story. I had always wanted to be a part of the Palm Beach Poetry Festival, and they had never ever. And I'm from that part of the state, and they had never ever. I felt like they didn't know who I was, or they didn't recognize me. And for many years, I had applied for the fellowship or the application process and never was accepted. And still, to this day, I haven't. But I do believe in my work and in my genius enough that one day I will be asked to come and read at that particular festival in Florida. And if I don't, oh well, I'm still proud to be a Floridian. Maybe that's not my journey. And that's the way I look at it. I used to get very upset because I was denied a certain fellowship, or denied a certain residency, or didn't get this prize or didn't get that prize. But it's about the journey. It's not about the residencies and the prizes all the time. Sometimes it's just that we have to go through these situations to understand that what is worthy is not always easy. And if it was easy, then the rich would live and the poor would die.
Exactly. I'm in full agreement. Sometimes we have to recognize when a door or opportunity is not for us, and we have to remind ourselves
Right.
that they're individuals, and our poetic journey
Yes,
is different. Yours is different from mine. Mine is different from yours, but
that's right.
we have to recognize
That's right.
that our journeys are valid. We have to find the celebrate our differences. We don't have to write or sound or
Yes.
look like anybody else, in this poetry scene. And like you said,
Nope.
every fellowship, every event or opportunity is not for us. Sometimes there's a reason
That's
why
right.
that door stay closed. So we have to accept
That's
that not
right.
every opportunity is for us, because there are opportunities that are specifically tailor made just for you,
That's right.
and we
That's
have
right.
to
And I
embrace that.
agree that. But that comes with growth too.
Right.
Noel, because in this business, just like any other art, it's competition, it's anger, it's jealousy, it's resentment, it's this, it's that, it's why did he get that, why didn't I get that, those kinds of things resonate with people, and I can't judge that on people. I just know from myself, to speaking to you on this important interview, to me, that I had to grow in that area. I had to grow, you know, I had
Definitely.
to grow. Yeah.
Definitely. And that leads me to my next question, because you
Right.
hear conversations about representation, representation, identity, the
Right.
importance of those things. How important is it for you to make sure that you represent yourself in your totality, whether it's representing yourself as a man, as a black man, or a person of color,
Right.
whether you discuss religion or other aspects of your life. How important is it for you to make sure that you're representing yourself in your complete totality
Right.
through your poetry?
That's a great question. Thank you. That's been a long journey. You know what I'm saying? And so again, we are seeking the truth. We are being authentic. We are trying to, be authentic. And oftentimes people they want to go for the gold. They want to go for the hot open mic. They want to go for what makes the crowd say, wow, and oftentimes that's not the issue either. It's about reading the audience, you know, evolving as a person, being mature, and really telling the truth about who you are. I lied about myself for many years. I lied about my sexuality. I lied about who I was. And so those kinds of things also come up in the work. that I can tell people that I am a Black gay man. And so that was hard for me because of my background, because of where I come from, because of religion, because of tradition, not my family, because my family has always loved me, but because of the situation that I was placed in. And so I had to conform to that, and I had to grow beyond that. And so I wasn't always a truth teller, but now that I'm older and I understand myself and the way I move in the world, I'm trying to be more truthful about who I am, and it reflects in my work.
Absolutely. And that's very important because I've always believed in being transparent, through my creativity.
Yeah.
Because,
Right.
people will resonate with you when you're transparent with who you are and what
Yeah.
you stand for and your subject matter. So,
Yes.
I commend you for making that decision to be yourself, to stand out from the crowd,
Yeah.
because that's very important. Because if you choose to blend in with other people just for the sake of being seen, then you lose yourself in the process. You lose your identity.
Yes.
You lose your mission of what you want to stand
Yeah.
for. So,
Right.
I commend you on exercising the importance of being yourself and being an individual
Right.
in this large crowd, that we call the poetry scene, because there's a lot of people blending in.
Right.
So, and if they choose to do that, that's their choice. But there's no reward in blending in. The reward comes from
It's
standing
not.
out and being true to yourself and true to what you have to
Yes.
say. So I definitely commend you for making that
It's,
decision to do that, because
thank
it
you. I
shows in
appreciate
what you
that.
present in your writing.
Right.
That's
Thank
good
you. I
to know.
appreciate that. Yeah. And so
Uh,
yes, it's been a long journey. Again, yeah.
yeah, definitely, and I see the rewards of your work. As I read in your bio, you have accomplished a lot for yourself, and that's something to be very proud of, and something definitely that's commendable. What would you
Thank you.
what would you say you would want to accomplish with your work? Like, do you have a particular goal or mission with your writing?
I do. There are some, like I come from a tradition. I come from the Florida tradition. So I come from when I hear sing a song full of the hope that the dark past has taught, I think about James Weldon Johnson, and I think about Zora Neale Hurston, and I think about Augusta Savage, and I think about the stories and the legacies that these Floridians have created in the world. And so I come from the Florida tradition, the artists that sought New York or sought the North in order to um, build this type of literary au revoir in order to, celebrate Florida. And that's James Weldon Johnson to me. That's Augusta Savage, who was a sculptor here in Harlem. And also that was the famous Zora Neale Hurston, also from Florida. And so I come from that tradition of Floridians being able to really explore the literary world and really build this audience and create this whole legacy for themselves. And those are some of the literary ancestors that but then I have the people in Florida that have been my teachers and my community members and people that I grew up with that always reach out to me and always say, Robert, we're proud of the little things that you're doing. I'm proud of the card that you sent me. I'm proud of you remember my birthday, or you remember my reunion, you remember my wedding, you remember my anniversary. So those kinds of things too are just as important. So my work to continue evolve, to build character, to again inform change. I am an advocate for men of color. I mean, I like to create work to protect the image of the man of color, because I am a man of color and I know how we can be misunderstood. We can be considered angry or toxic, or we can be considered, misrepresented in so many areas of this life. So I am an advocate for that energy too. So yeah.
Awesome. That's excellent. That's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, at this time, I'm going to share my screen again,
Okay.
because now it's time, when I ask you to take this time for you to take the mic. So at this
Okay.
time, Robert, I'm going to give you an opportunity at this time to share up to 5 poems of your choosing to
Okay.
give our audience an idea of of what your writing is all about. So
All right,
at this
thank
time,
you.
the floor was yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This piece is for Nelson Mandela. We want to, Nelson Mandela, this has an epigraph by Derek Walcott. It therefore becomes necessary for the writer to make repeated, unending explorations of the same territory, since every journey throws up new truths. And this is an epigraph by Derek Walcott for Nelson. We want to plant an old soul in new ground. This time, this death of death, the mass of everlasting. The year has become a pure spirit, a disappearance of the great matriarchs and patriarchs, the saints and the ancestors. But who will be left after the judgment, after Harriet Tubman's great sojourner truth meets Deborah and Ruth? I want to plant an old soul in new ground, to call us the new black, the new white, the new color, the renaissance of the African naissance. And he died on the Congo cross, on the Coptic, with helicopters and fuselages, with the barrage of bullets into humanity in Robbins, with Dennis, with Tutu, with the blue blood, the Defrock, the elders, and the griot, and displace them underground. And what is Africa to me? Nothing to do with my American, my black boy on the corner of Lenox. Nothing to do with my brothers without, marginalized, penalized on the jury of their peers, their fears of a black nation, the care not to lose control. And we are a redistrict. We are a red line. We are a double standard in this old soul, in this new ground. And there are sure to be war and immigration and welfare and emancipation. And who will celebrate another born and a better way in my neighborhood? And my could if I could, and my want because I want. And there is the paradox. And he is pure spirit and pure voice. His history in the chariots of James Weldon Johnson and W.E.B. Du Bois, and this call to Pan-African, this negritude, and all the poets of the Black Bottom, without language, just anger and poverty, a slaughter of bulls for sacrifice, die dancing and praising the lesser God, and the rape of a Kimberley mine, the fall of Sun City, the pity of pittance, the meager trope of this present age, and the singing shall stop. The hymns shall be no more in this colonial antebellum. And do not title me reverie, more rivalry than chivalry, more killing fields than to till this soil. And there is oil beneath the earth, where smoke and mirth and acid and masses of burial grounds are found again. Freedom for the free in a free land. 100 sonnets burn across the bloody sky until our end of our destruction. To fuse what was with what is, I remain undone. That's from Nelson Mandela. I'll change it a little bit.
Awesome piece.
I want more than a vacation in the Caribbean. There were squawking roosters and lizards. There were purple mountains, and the mountains looked like pyramids. So I shuttled near Mount Misery, and there was plenty of time to write and retreat along my feet, to swim like Hemingway or F. Scott. But I was there to write a novel, just marvel at the infinite atmosphere. Charles de Gaulle. 5 hours back across the international dates. I want to find Voltaire and Rimbaud. I want to read Spinoza or Bertrand Russell. But this was my first time in Paris, in Senegalese grass made jacket, checking all the facts. I tried to ask for directions, tried to connect in English, but it was the snobbery of a French breakfast, the method of maps and apps. So I gleamed on the Eiffel and leaned like the Pisa. This is for the Harlem Globetrotters. Harlem Globetrotters. Elegy to the Harlem Globetrotters. I did not see them. Only their massive hands and bodies and statistics of 6'5" and 6'6", big Apollos that had names like Lightning and Streak and Spark Plug. They probably hung from telephone wires like sneakers, but I did not see them. Only a fragment, a cut square of grandma's leftover cloth to make the entire quilt, pieces and shavings, belief that gave them she kept from older projects, the arm of a sleeve, a leaf of a Bible verse. The people kept everything in case of a hurricane. They filled the foot tub with water and covered the mirror, and we were asked not to talk on the telephone, and there were their superstitious ways. And this is how we behave when we listen to grown folks' conversation. They would spit tobacco juice in our eye. And if you wished on a star, we would get a sty. You better go outside and play, she would say, listening to grown folks' business. So we shifted to our childhood. We listened out for motherhood because one day we would be grown and we would have to take this stuff to our homes. So grandma kept all the obituaries, all the programs from Terry service, and I did not see them, only a made for television docudrama, a romantic version. They could not record the purging when we stood in line for castor oil or cod liver oil, when we wrapped our sandwiches in aluminum foil. We were never behind glass. All our food came from the cast of a spider skillet and crock pots with rickety lids that sat until church was over. And then we would smell over her shoulder. This exhibit was just a pittance of the story. Each one had more to say. I had stood in line, had did their time, hoping that they could play, but the way only came through prayer, through the sharing of collection plates and ties and envelopes, from folding chairs from the back of big church buses. They would raise an offering for the Holy Ghost coffers. They prayed for their children. And when they left home and begged them to listen, and probably like me was told, do not forget that song. Do not forget what your mama said. Do not forget what your dead grandpa said. He was sick and afflicted with the gout. So how can this exhibit word of mouth? So I stood there and hoped the exhibit that I paid $18 to see would speak to me. I'll do one more. Thank you. This is for October. I followed the drinking gourd in October. October would not be the old October, not the one that I prepared for being a year older. The color of saffron and bleeding red falling down on me, tamarind, a kind of transformation from urban to agrarian. My birthday wish for a miniature pumpkin patch in front of my window. It is not the beginning, but the ending. October becomes May or March. November is the old October, the celebration of old souls and saints, a designated day of the dead, a reliquary for my glorified grandmother and a fortified big sister. They left us with the people who could fly. They followed us through the drinking gourd, across the Ohio River, over into Beulah or Jubilee or Canaan or Bethesda with Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth to the
Hey, Robert, are you still there? I think your screen froze.
Okay, let me see here. October. October, they followed the drinking gourd. October will not be the old October, not the one that I prepared for it being a year older. The color of saffron and bleeding red falling down on me, tamarind, a kind of transformation from urban to agrarian. My birthday wish for a miniature pumpkin patch in front of my window. It is not the beginning, but the ending. October becomes May or March. November is the old October, the celebration of old souls and saints, a designated day of the dead, a reliquary for a glorified grandmother and a fortified big sister. They left us with the people who could fly. They followed the drinking gourd across the Ohio River over into Beulah or Jubilee or Canaan or Bethesda with Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth to the great by and by.
Awesome, awesome. Excellent selections of poetry, man. Thank you so much for coming through to share those powerful
Thank you.
pieces. Powerful pieces.
I appreciate it.
Before we close, I'm just gonna share a couple of more things. Just a second.
Okay.
Let's pull this up, this PowerPoint. All right. At this time is our audience Q&A session. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I got a couple of questions that I want to pose to you, and one of them is dream collaborations. Now, if there's any poets that you would love to collaborate with, whether alive or deceased, who would you choose to collaborate with and why?
Oh man, that's such a great question. I never thought about that. I would love to collaborate with Langston Hughes. He was like one of the first blues poets that I know of. I would love to collaborate with Baldwin. I would love to collaborate with Alvin Ailey. I would love to do something with Basquiat. I mean, like, there's a few people out there I would love to collab. There's a dream collaborations. I'm telling you, those would be my dream collaborations. Yes.
Excellent.
I would love to collaborate with Augusta Savage too, and James Weldon Johnson. Songs and sculptures. Oh yes, I would love that. Yeah. And I think that's a great question because Noel, that's the thing. That's why I did that thing with Amy Williams. She was a visual artist, and I wrote the poem to Zora. She painted the paintings to Zora, and so it's about collaboration because I think when 2 or 3 people come together and collaborate, then that just increases the power of the work. To me, that's what I believe.
Awesome, excellent. And
yeah.
What's coming up for you in the future? What do you have any other projects or events coming up that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes, I do have a book coming out in October that the publisher, Three Rooms Press, has already decided to publish because of the fact that she wants to submit that particular manuscript to an award contest. So that's coming up. And just figuring out my next collaboration. I am down. I am open to collaboration with people if people are interested in creating new work. I do have this infatuation with Scott Joplin right now. So it's just like I'm trying to, read all the information that I can read on Scott Joplin's legacy. And I'm trying to create poems to him, possibly a one-man show that I could shop around New York and just, still work into the areas that I love to explore so much because there's so much unwritten history out there that's yet to remain open to the world. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, before we close, can you share where you can be found on social media?
I can be found on social media under my name, Robert Gibbons, and under my name on Instagram, Anthony Robert Gibbons. Anthony is actually my middle name, but on Instagram, it's Anthony Robert Gibbons. So you can just definitely connect with me on Instagram at Anthony Robert Gibbons. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, at this time, before we close this out for the evening, I want to take this time to say thank you. I want to thank you, Robert, for being my guest. Awesome episode. Thank you so much for sharing your powerful poetry. And I wish you all the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you, my brother.
Well, if you wish to connect with Poets with Purpose, you can connect with the Facebook group Poets with Purpose. I can also be found on Twitter @PoetsWPurpose.
Right.
And the YouTube channel Poets with Purpose, same name. Stay tuned for episode 14 coming up, featuring Rescue Poetics, Suzanne Justiniano.
Right.
That interview is taking place Saturday, August 14th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I will definitely be here. And I would just like to say, Noel, thank you so much for what you do in the world, how you support poets. I think that's an amazing journey. I think that, that I will definitely support and promote your work here in New York. And also just people out there like you are so valuable, and you're never really, ever really given the credit for what you do. And that is, you do kind of like a ministry, like you're like ministry. I mean, like really you support artists that somebody in the world might hear their voice, or somebody might buy their chapbook or buy their work or reach out to them and say, hey, I have a gig for you, or I have something for you. So I appreciate people like you and what you do in the world. So thank you again for having me here. In any way I can help, I will be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's much appreciated. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate the support. And for those of you in the audience that wish to connect with me, I can be reached at 646-372-6230 or email poetswithpurpose@gmail.com. And I also like to share that all of my logos and flyers were designed by the awesome team at Eclipse Graphics New York. They can be found on Instagram @Eclipse Graphics NY if you like to connect with them and see samples of their work. And lastly, if
Gotcha.
anyone in our audience like to make a donation, I can be found on PayPal, Cash App, and Zelle. And with that,
Wow,
ladies
great.
and gentlemen, that is a wrap. Barbara, thank you again for being my
Thank you.
guest. This was an awesome
right.
episode, great poetry.
Right. Right.
Glad conversating with you. Everyone, have a good night and
Right.
God bless. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part.
Right. Thank you.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. All right.